Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 We're concluding the 5th chapter of the first canto of Bhagavatam, which is exciting. We spent a few weeks, actually, going through this chapter. Narada Muni instructing Bhagavatam to Vyasadeva. Canto 1, Chapter 5, Text 40.
540.
One 540. Narada speaking. Tvam apida prashuta vishutam vipo samapyatena vidam puputsitam. Prakyai dokkair muhur arditatmanam sanklesha nirvanam ushantinanyata. Please, therefore, describe the Almighty Lord's activities, which you have learned by your vast knowledge of the Vedas. For that will satisfy the hankerings of great learned men, and at the same time mitigate the miseries of the masses of common people, who are always suffering from material pangs. Indeed, there is no other way to get out of such miseries. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Sri Narada Muni, from practical experience, definitely asserts that the prime solution of all problems of material work is to broadcast very widely the transcendental glories of the Supreme Lord. There are 4 classes of good men, and there are 4 classes of bad men also. The 4 classes of good men acknowledge the authority of the Almighty Lord, and therefore such good men, 1, when they are in difficulty, 2, when they are in need of money, 3, when they are advanced in knowledge, and 4, when they are inquisitive to know more and more about God, intuitively take shelter of the Lord. As such, Naradaji advises Vyasadeva to broadcast the transcendental knowledge of God in terms of the vast Vedic knowledge which he had already attained. As far as the bad men are concerned, they are also 4 in number. 1, those who are simply addicted to the mode of progressive fruitive work and thus are subjected to the accompanying miseries. 2, those who are simply addicted to vicious work for sense satisfaction and so suffer the consequence. 3, those who are maturely very much advanced in knowledge, but who suffer because they do not have the sense to acknowledge the authority of the Almighty Lord. And 4, the class of men who are known as atheists and who therefore purposely hate the very name of God, although they are always in difficulty. Sri Naradaji advised Vyasadeva to describe the glories of the Lord just to do good to all 8 classes of men, both good and bad. Srimad Bhagavatam is therefore not meant for any particular class or men or sect. It is for the sincere soul who actually wants his own welfare and peace of mind. Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasa Adi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Rama Hare. Hare Krishna. Please, therefore basically contains the entire chapter before it. Narada has made his case. This is what happened to me. This is my story. This is how it worked. This is how it works for you. This is what's going on. Please, therefore. So rather than reiterate all of Narada's reasoning, as useful as it is, I'd like to focus on his conclusion. Please, therefore, describe the Lord's activities. So the first point is, Vyasadeva had already learned this. Vyasadeva already actually had connection with the Lord, but his problem was that his service was to help other people. Right? That was his service. We can relate to that. Mm-hmm. We can be, police officer, doctor, lawyer, parent, crossing guard. Everyone is rendering service, actually. Mm-hmm. Everyone. As Bob Dylan's saying, you got to serve somebody. You got to serve somebody. Just the way we are. It's our dharma. Can't help it. Everyone's serving. And if you're like, president or prime minister, you're just like the biggest servant. Everyone's just serving. That's their dharma. So we're trying to be of service to other people. And actually, Anybody who's a little sincere in their heart feels like this is what actually satisfies me anyway, right? We get into relationships, we have friendships, we have like different sanghas based on different things, but there was always a sense of service. So Vyasadeva wanted to be of service, and in fact, he'd been given this service to help people to advance, reach the goal of life. But he was being a little too indirect. His service was, his attitude was like, well, I'll help them to purify their body and mind and follow the rules and regulations of society, and that's good.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't satisfying him. And it wasn't satisfying him because he actually knew better. And when we know something is, when in our heart we know something better than we acknowledge externally, we feel dissatisfaction. We feel not aligned properly. We feel depression. We feel anxiety. We feel, listen to the beginning of the chapter. He was morose. Although very advanced, he was morose. He didn't feel aligned properly. The word dukkha in Sanskrit means like suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Dukkha actually means like not aligned properly. Like if you have a wheel on a car or a bicycle, that thing isn't aligned properly, you try riding with it, what happens? Sound, dysfunction,
Throws off the
it
path.
throws off the path. It doesn't feel right. You're bumping around, like it just doesn't work.
Clunky.
So Vyasadeva had this internal recognition. And what to speak of Vyasadeva, we can have this recognition because we're actually sensitive. We're actually sentient beings. We can recognize when something is not working. Ever been in a dysfunctional relationship and you're like, in your heart, you're like, I gotta pull the plug on this thing, but you don't want to, right? Or you feel like you can't. Or even you're in a conversation and you're like, in your, maybe even your conscious mind, often this is unconscious, but in your conscious mind, you're like, I gotta get out of here. This is not good. I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to hear about this. I gotta go. And you're like trying to drop a hint. And we feel, our intuition tells us. So Narada is speaking to Vyasadeva. You've already heard about Krishna. You actually already know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
You have to help people connect themselves to him. Why? Because whether somebody is actually, and Prabhupada uses these very loaded words, good or bad, right? So good or bad means the degree to which one is actually aligned with Krishna consciously, aligned with higher power. Everyone's actually good in the ultimate sense, because as the purport concludes, this is not a sectarian consideration. There's not the chosen people and everyone else. There's not the believers and non-believers. There's not the good souls and the bad souls. But whether one is fortunate or unfortunate, whether one is awake or asleep, whether one is explicitly trying to be spiritual or one is explicitly trying to avoid that, or something in between, hearing about Krishna is just good. It just purifies the problem. So if somebody is very advanced, then hearing about Krishna actually elicits transcendental ecstasy because their heart is so soft. The distractions that are there, greed, pride, lust, anger, envy, they're not actually there anymore. Those things that are carried by the conditioned soul, which weigh them down, they're not so much there. Such a person, because of that absence of those external things, they're not holding themselves back anymore. They're actually a brilliant light. And as soon as Krishna shines on them, they reflect that back and everyone can see their joy. And they themselves feel great joy by hearing about Krishna. They chant Krishna's names, they're feeling ecstasy. They hear Bhagavatam, they're feeling ecstasy. Their relationship is deepening. But even for somebody who's not aligned that way, who has all kinds of considerations of things that are weighing them down, and anxieties and anger and fear and lust and self-doubt and self-sabotage and all that stuff, just hearing about Krishna, Narada says, it mitigates the miseries of the masses of common people. Mitigates the miseries of the masses. That's a nice little alliteration right there. What's our business? Our business is to mitigate the miseries of the masses. Triple M. That's our whole goal. Mitigate the miseries of the masses. This is a project of universal good. This is universal welfare, non-sectarian welfare. If I want to help somebody, but I help them on the basis of their body or mind, it's actually sectarian. Why? Because it's relative, right? I mean, it sounds like radical, but if I start like a social club and there's like this considerations, like you have to belong to this qualifications to help to come in, then I can serve you, right? Or I will even at the higher level, like I will very naturally serve my family differently than I'll serve other people because it's necessary. That's my dharma. I have to actually have. They require special consideration. But it's nice. In fact, it's more than nice. It's actually deeply relieving and satisfying to drop all the different categories, drop all the pretense that we're actually all different, and actually behave it according to reality, which is that we're all connected. We're all therefore just siblings here. And even somebody who is very bad, even somebody who's very unfortunate, very turned away, very asleep, they get benefit by hearing about Krishna. We find, I've seen this many times, whether someone sticks with the process, whether someone even acknowledges it externally, when they come to the society of devotees, when they hear Bhagavatam, they hear Bhagavad Gita, it's very relieving. It feels good. It just offers a sense of perspective that one can't get somewhere else. And hearing about Krishna, even hearing his name, but hearing his pastimes, it just feels good. It does something to the heart. It mitigates the miseries. Mitigates means relieves. So even at the beginning stage, when, before they come in and hear, and after they come in and hear, the person may feel like all their anxieties and anger and confusion and despair and doubt and depression, all that fun stuff. But at least when they're there, they don't. Mm-hmm. At least they feel the lessening of it, the mitigation of it. And if they keep coming, then you don't just feel that. You feel like really a slackening of that knot. All that stuff that's binding you like a hard knot becomes slackened. Let go. The knot becomes undone. You become more and more free. And then you get some positive stand. The heart actually awakens to Krishna more and more. You actually develop a relationship with him more and more. And then throughout your day, which means throughout your life, you get his help, which is great. Because without that, we're struggling. Get his help to understand how to deal in social situations, because after all, he's a super soul in my heart. He's a super soul in their heart. Why wouldn't he help me connect? Right? Whether it's in your job, in your relationships, in your misunderstandings with people, your social dealings. He helps us to have the knowledge we need. He helps us to have the renunciation we require to act on that knowledge. Knowledge means knowing what to do. Renunciation means doing it. Being able to let go of that which is not good enough for us, to do what's good for us. We get his help in so many ways. So in the beginning, we feel good. We get some mitigation of suffering. Cheto Darpana Marjanam, heart becomes purified. And then as we progress, more and more good things happen. So that happens through hearing. Describe the Lord's activities, because that will help people, because they're hearing it. Somebody has to describe it, somebody who knows more, ideally. Vyasadeva certainly knows more. He has a full-blown relationship with Krishna. And Narada, his pure devotee guru, is saying, you've got to share this. Do not sit on this, right? And this is also relevant for us. Vyasadeva is up here. Lord Shiva is up here. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Prabhupada, they're up here. They're way up here. The realization. So they can share so much. But actually, we're over here, right? But we can share that much. And not only can we should. Because it's good for everybody. And it also is good for us. I share a little bit about Krishna. And people who come to the Friday morning, morning program with Hare Krishna, I give a little class for 15 minutes. The Tuesday evening, Nectar of Devotion. On Wednesday this week, we just read the whole Bhagavad Gita. They may think, this is good for me, I should come to this. I'll let you know a little secret. Mm-hmm. I probably have more fun than all of you do. Sharing it. And letting the cat out of the bag, because now that you have the road to that experience yourself, you can have your own little Tuesday evening. We'll invent more days of the week, so we can all go to each other's reading sanghas. The point is, Vyasadeva, he's going to feel transcendental ecstasy sharing this. Shukadeva Goswami, the speaker of Bhagavatam, he speaks for 7 days because Parikshit has to hear, because he's got 7 days to live. And both Parikshit, the hearer, and Shukadeva, the speaker, are experiencing transcendental ecstasy. And all the listeners in the audience who were present in live, real time, including Narada, and a variety of stages of different consciousness, some very advanced, some kind of confused, kind of like into karma or down. And all of us, we're all feeling joy too. So it's not a relative process. It's not like one of these things where the teacher has about, all right, I'll help you. When I was in college, I remember going to class and there were these like genius level professors who were doing incredible research, and they come in, they trudge in, they're like, barely hear them because they don't want to be there, because they want to go back to their little laboratories, the stuff they're actually good at. We're talking about total social misfits, nerds of the highest degree. They have no business with social interaction. They don't want to be there. They don't like being there. They're not good at it. Half of them are decent teachers. Rare do you find someone who's great at something and a great teacher at the same time. They're two very different skill sets. And I was like thinking, this is what I'm here for? To deal with Joe, king of the nerds, who can't even make eye contact when he talks, mutters under his breath, and won't even give you office hours afterwards. Then they're gone. And then for them, it's an austerity to even deal with people. It's not like that for us. There's no separation of like, this is for me and this is for other people. This is the austerity. Okay, I'll do this to pay the bills, right? No, it's such a joy to share Krishna. It's such a joy to hear about Krishna. It's such a joy to talk about Krishna. As soon as we come in the association of more senior devotees, we're like, please tell us what you heard. What have you read lately? What can you do for us? And if we come in the association of somebody who's a little bit junior, it's like, check it out. This is what I just read. Isn't this awesome? Equally good. And peers get to do both. Equally good. So this is a process, and it's not relative. It's actually absolute. It's always good. It always works. It works. I've seen it. I have devotee friends who have a cancer diagnosis. It works for them. I have friends who are, I've seen it work without language, actually. I was in the Delhi temple in India, and I was a brahmachari, I was a monk, and I went to the morning program, and the Bhagavatam class was given in Hindi. So all I heard of the class that I could understand was whatever words I could pick up from the verse because of my rudimentary knowledge of Sanskrit. Anything in the class that was actually Sanskrit that I could understand, 4 or 5 words, like whatever words they use in English. Yeah, Krishna. And
Narada.
I actually felt great. I felt great going to that class. Going into it, I was like, well, maybe I should just chant more rounds. No. Let's do this. Let's surrender to the program. Let's be there. It worked. It was great. I felt increased desire to surrender to Krishna. I felt it was just an ineffable feeling of the speaker. I felt everyone. There was moments of laughter. There was moments of seriousness, and I was there for it, and I was carried along. So it really is absolute, and we should trust that it really works. And what that means for us is show up here at the Bhagavatam. Show up. If you can't read on your own, come where they're reading. If you can't chant on your own, come where they're chanting. And if you could do both, then do both, because it works. And it mitigates your miseries. And if you spend a little bit of time doing that, and you get the time back because you feel happier and because you're more efficient, you get support. That's my experience. And it's the experience of everyone I know. So I got to be honest. That's my recommendation. And it's not just I'm saying, Narada Muni is saying, Srila Prabhupada's saying. And Vyasadeva, after this conversation, he's also saying, because he ends up editing more spiritual literature, including the Bhagavatam, he actually recites it. That's where we get the recitation from. So all the authorities, those who have run the experiment, they're saying, so why not try it? And guess what? We're all doing that right now. Right, mitigating the miseries of the masses who are always suffering. Actually, everyone's always suffering. We may think in our mind, it's just me who's suffering and everyone else is having a good time. We may think like, oh man, this is really embarrassing. Everyone's out there having a great time but me. And I'm here like doubting myself and wondering, is this it? And no, it's not just you. It's literally everybody. The only person who's not is the person who's sufficiently dulled their senses to believe that everything's okay. It's all fine. I like this. I'll just watch the football game. I got my barbecue wings. I got my football. I could die a happy man. Okay. On some level, somebody can believe that. And on the other end, there's the pure devotee who's actually completely transcendental and feeling ecstasy at all times. In between is everyone else, including even Vyasadeva. Even he needed a reminder. What to speak of us? Even he needed a reminder. And that's okay. And no shame in it. That's what we're here for. To remind ourselves and each other. Om Tat Sat. So the power of mitigating the miseries of the masses by hearing, and how it's good in the beginning and it's good when you're very purified, how it's non-sectarian, and how it's fun and great even for those who are supposedly teaching and giving, because the giving and receiving are at the same time. They're non-different. And so it's not like going to a class with somebody who doesn't want to be given the class, they'd rather be in their lab. It's not relative. It's actually joyfully performed. Hare Krishna. Now let's take in your reflections. Reflections means anything you heard.
I love the reminder that Krishna's in all of our hearts, right? As the super soul, and that he gives us, what you said, the knowledge, which is knowing what to do, and then the renunciation, knowing, and then doing it.
You have the capacity to
The
do it.
capacity to do it.
Otherwise, if you know what to do but you can't do it, it's actually kind of tough. That's why we find very intelligent people in this world who lack spiritual realization are actually very unhappy. Was Nietzsche a very happy person? The great observer comedians of the world who can point out the absurdity of things, are they very happy? Was Robin Williams a very happy gentleman? He was a very good-hearted person, but he was not a very happy person.
Oppenheimer.
Robert Oppenheimer was not very happy. He had some difficult choices. It didn't make him happy.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know what to do about it. You shouldn't have stopped reciting at the 11th chapter. Time I am, the destroyer of words. Should have kept reciting. That's what it would have helped him be more happy. But he did something.
It also it's
it's
that we're empowered by Krishna.
That also relates to this idea. This is a very modern idea. Ever heard this idea? How would I put it? What's like a catchphrase? Anyone can do anything. You can be whatever you want. Go out there and make it happen. It's this idea of like I'm a self-made man, you know? Yeah, what is it? Frank Sinatra? I did it my way. It's like this great expression of pride. Like, yeah, looking back on my life, I just got to say I did it, you know? Baloney.
I love Frank, but
we can't even, but we can't even breathe without help. We're living in this incredible biological machine. We can't even live for more than 45 seconds without help because we're being breathed. These lungs are working. Without that, you just expire. So we're completely dependent at all steps. And that's okay. That's actually great. It's actually great if you give yourself to Krishna and he helps you. It feels wonderful to not have to be the boss and figure it out yourself, to get support and help and guidance and intelligence, to recognize I'm getting my breath and everything else I need from higher power. Only the materially intoxicated, addicted person who needs to be the man avoids that. Everyone else like, yeah, I could really use some help here, right? Whether it's teachers, whether it's support, anything, friendship, connection, we're dependent. We're always dependent. And bhakti is just like, all right, I admit it. I'm here. Help me, Krishna. Do it only you can do. Do it only you can do. I'm here for it. It's like acknowledging that explicitly. Yeah. More reflections.
Yeah, I have one. It's kind of interesting. I'm sitting here in my sunroom and I have the Prefontaine No Limits plaque that I'm staring at. And he was such a, I don't know, a renegade. He loved running. I'm just wondering if he'd have known even a little drop of what we know. I wonder where he'd be right now.
Well, my experience is there are a lot of people who are very empowered, who recognize that they're empowered and not just that they're a big deal. Because if you don't recognize it, you actually cut yourself off from guidance and support and growth, both external and internal. And so sometimes we can see that the most advanced people are actually, whether they're explicitly devotional or not, and that does vary. That's all across the board. You get different results there. But they do recognize that, like great musicians, they'll talk about how it's coming from above. And like, I have to listen to my muse. I have to listen to the voice. I have to understand what I'm supposed to do with this note and this melody and this harmony and rhythm. They'll say that. Great athletes will talk about it. Great scientists and minds and intellectuals will acknowledge that there is serendipity and genius and subtle, kind of ineffable things you can't break down that are behind all their discoveries. And their job is to prepare themselves and to do the work. They have, if you're a world-class violinist, you have to go and you have to practice. You have to keep the instrument strong, meaning your mind and your fingers. And then you have to like do that work and then let it flow. They'll say that. So it's entirely possible that this person did recognize that, because no matter how advanced you are, we are always dependent.
Mm.
And in my experience, the most advanced people are the ones who recognize that best, because they never cut themselves off from help. They never think they're independent. They never think like, I can't learn from my peers. I can't learn from my juniors. If they think like that, they're actually in anxiety because they're always afraid of losing their position.
Mm.
And you lose a lot of energy being in anxiety. And if you're losing a lot of energy, how can you be great at something? The ones who are great at something are always like, open and always receiving, which is it's actually a devotional orientation. It's like, I'm not the boss. Krishna's the boss. What can I learn here? What is it? What is the lesson here? What does higher power want me to understand here?
Mm-hmm.
Even you're talking to a child who can't even like tie their shoes, they can teach you something,
Mm-hmm.
right? They can definitely teach you something. That's why parenthood exists.
Called patience.
Yeah, they'll teach you patience if nothing else. My spiritual teacher
Patience.
had a car ride for 8 hours in Japan with one of his godbrothers and a child who was like a little demon child. And they spent the first half of the car ride like seething, and the last half deeply in gratitude. And they refer to that child as their guru, because that child taught them a level of patience that they couldn't have learned otherwise.
Mm.
Right? And this is like, and I was not there, but this would have to be really something. This child would really have to be something special to get my spiritual teacher thrown off, because he's incredibly tolerant. But those experiences, if you take them the right way, that's what builds tolerance. That's what gets you to the level of being a tolerant soul. It's like, yeah, I get it. Things can happen. I've been there. It's okay. I can handle this. I handled the other thing. I'll handle this too. So they can be our gurus. So who knows how advanced that person is?
Thanks, Mary.
Reflections.
Yeah, I think this practice, the thing I've learned the best is surrender is the best way to go. Releasing the ego. No, I'm not the big deal.
Yeah.
Krishna's the big deal. And it becomes easier as the practice deepens. And then it just becomes natural. That I'm not in control and I need to surrender. And and it's challenging because there's days where I'll have the material mind is just and it's a whirlwind.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to, we get frustrated because you're capable of being more transcendental, but you can't be. And that's when you have to go and just find these moments of surrender.
You just try.
You just try.
Yeah.
And that's all you can do because you're powerless.
Yeah.
And you're always powerless.
Yeah. But we can choose to try. And that's
we
power.
choose to try. And Krishna empowers us to do the work.
And it feels good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole thing of surrendering, it's a very deep thing, because for somebody who's used to being the boss and in control, surrender looks one way. It's to let Krishna be the boss. But for somebody who's used to being passive, letting other people control, observing life, being inactive, then surrender means, who am I to hold myself back? Who am I to choose this? Why not let Krishna? Why not do what Krishna is telling me to do? Who am I to sell myself short? This is all I'm capable of doing. Mm-hmm. Surrender means Krishna says you can chant, so I do it. I mean, there's a verse in the Vedanta Sutra that says Shastra Yonitvat, which means the Shastra, the scripture is the yoni means womb. It's like the source of all. It's a sutra, so it's like 2 words. Shastra Yonitvat. It means, if you break it down, it means scripture is the basis for our growth, right? And in the commentaries on that, one of the acharyas explains the proof that we can practice bhakti is that it's given in the scripture. Because Krishna wouldn't ask us to do something. He wouldn't advise us, to instruct us to do something that we weren't capable of doing. So whether you think you can do it or you think you can't do it, surrender means you just do it. You try chanting, you try associating, And that can mean like, okay, I do it, but I set aside my pride and arrogance and I just show up. Or it can mean I do it and I set aside my lack of belief in myself and my inertia and I show up, right? Show up physically, but also show up in the quality of like being attentive. And either way, that's surrender. That's actually surrender in action. That's how it works. And when we do that, we feel the results. We do that, we feel the results. Like, there's two kinds of devotees. One kind of devotee will like want to lead the kirtan, want to give the class, and they can do that. And their work is to like learn how to do that as a service.
Mm-hmm.
And the other person wants to be in the background, wants to not be seen. If they're in kirtan, they're the quietest person in the room. And that person has to understand that they have full permission to chant out loud, as loudly as they can, and let Krishna come through that, because he's in the Mahamantra. We're not chanting to get our voice out there. We're chanting to get Krishna out there.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody can do that, whether they have a good voice, whether they're a born leader, whether they're charismatic, or whether they're the complete opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that person, there is the growing realization that actually I should raise my voice, literally, and also figuratively. And that's also surrender.
Jai.
They can be a little Vyasadeva and transmit, whether they even know it or not. We're all little transmitters. And if you're in the Sangha of devotees, I mean, we're always looking to hear Krishna's name from anyone else. So there's unlimited invitation there.
Like in 12-step programs, they say that we're powerless, but we're not helpless.
Yeah.
Right? You have that choice you have choice in your action.
Yeah.
And then the action's empowered by.
Bhakti is a very empowering process. We realize how much choice we have and we actually get to exercise it. There's a lot of support. I mean, Kishori and I are giving support here because we've gotten like unlimited support in our lives. It's actually staggering how much help there is. How many saintly persons have helped me along the way. I can't even count. I would be a complete fraud if I didn't try to do the same for other people. So there's really unlimited support. All you have to do is ask for it. Jai. More reflections, comments, or questions? Martin, did you hear anything? Want to reflect?
Yeah, one of the things that I took away was like your enthusiasm for sharing, and like how you said you probably had the most fun and you enjoyed it the most.
I think I do.
And
Yeah.
I read this might not be 100. I'm still trying to figure this out, but I wrote down like sharing might even be better than knowing, and
sharing might even be better than knowing. I like that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's. I'm okay if you want to modify that.
No, I think that works because knowing is like solitary.
Yeah.
And sharing is, I mean, when you share, you actually know more, right?
Yeah.
Because sharing implies mutuality.
Yeah.
Because sharing isn't like, here, you're going to all show up and I'm going to talk at you for an hour. That's not sharing.
Right.
I consider sharing like a mutual thing where it's like
collaboration.
Yeah. So there's a nice verse in Tirukanda Bhagavatam 325, I think 25. Satam prasangan mama virya samvido. Prasanga means to get into association and to mutually share. And the verse talks about how when devotees do that, how they feel joyful. Because there's a way in which they're mutually katayantam parasparam. That's also Canto chapter 10 Bhagavad Gita. Katayantashtamang nityam tushanti charamanticha. They're mutually sharing. And that's the symptom of devotees. And the whole Bhagavatam is devotees asking each other questions and sharing. They're not like Om Shanti Shanti sitting in a mountaintop alone. The closest person is like the next mountain over. There's one sage they can yell at. It's like, no, they want to be around other devotees, and they want to be around anyone who can hear, and they want to share. So Sankirtan means the complete kirtan. The Sankirtan movement is like the more people you can get chanting Hare Krishna, the better. Bring them all in. Prabhupada's like, oh yeah, we're in the Bowery. Bring in all the heroin addicts. I don't mind. Whoever can sit still enough to listen, that's good. We can only imagine the amount of joy he was feeling sharing Krishna at that level. So sharing is better than knowing. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Because it's like you have to know to share, right? Too. Like there's like
yeah.
There's knowledge, but then there's like, okay, because like I also write down like you have to have open the heart to receive and give. Like
Yeah.
like if you're just receiving, you also have to.
Yeah, because if you just
And
stop
it's
it,
even harder.
you just
It's
stop
even
at
harder
knowing.
for, at least for me, it's harder to.
Yeah.
I can take. Don't worry, I got it. But it's
Yeah.
like giving is even harder. Like
Mm,
it's like it's like the next. It's like.
Well, you just gave me
Well,
something.
yeah, thank you.
Sharing is better than knowing. That's a
That
little
was awesome.
sutra.
There you go.
Because
That's a
yeah,
tattoo.
if you receive something and you stop, you just keep it to yourself. Prabhupada explains it like this: the Brahmanas are meant to teach. That's their dharma, because they're the ones who have the privilege of just being able to sit still and learn. They don't have to make money. They just live on donations, and they have enough training so they can live simply enough that they don't have to live such an elaborate life to support themselves. They can just learn, and in exchange, the price they have to pay is they have to give that to others. And if they don't, then it's like a cracked pot. You have so much water in it, it just keeps leaking out. You have to share it with others. That's a Brahmin's dharma. They have to teach. That's why in the Bhagavad Gita at the beginning, there's great Brahmins on the other side who taught the martial science to all the bad guys because they had to, because their dharma is to teach. They have it. Balaram taught the art of fighting with a club. He taught it to Bhima, and he also taught it to Duryodhana. Why? Because you have to teach. Teacher has to do that. You can try to teach your students how to use it properly, but you have to teach. You can't hold on to it. It doesn't work. Otherwise, your pot gets cracks in it. So, yeah, sharing is better than knowing. I'm stealing that.
I have the word might there. I can probably cross it out and say yes, it is probably.
What's
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
You
yeah.
wrote might.
Bona
like,
fide.
question
Might be
mark.
there. I was like, let me clarify this before. Yeah.
It's bona fide. It's
Sonia,
like,
one thing I keep thinking about, when you were talking about these like super geniuses or people that are like, seriously scientific or whatever, and then they're maybe not the type of people that you'd want to take to a dinner party. Like my son's neurosurgeon, amazing, but I would never want to be in a room with him at a party, just can't
Yeah.
socialize and all that kind of thing. But what I keep thinking about that is like, there's most of those type of people like can't surrender to the humility of it, maybe because they think like their ego's in charge, that they think that shows a weakness or they need power. Like take our military leaders or whatever. I used to work training the Navy and the Marine Corps, and the admirals would never go to a class. I taught computer classes. They couldn't go to a class with their subordinates, but they would take me into a room privately and say, I don't know what I'm doing, please teach me.
yeah, because
Because
they
they-
have to learn.
Right. Yeah, because their power, because of the power dynamic, they can't show that humility. They can't show their subordinates that they don't know.
Yeah,
Like
and
it's just interesting.
the more advanced you are, the more they're in the front row.
Right.
The front row they want to hear. I've seen it. I've
Yeah.
seen Radhanath Swami in Bhagavatam classes. He is really like attentive.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just interesting. So I was just thinking that I feel like because of the power dynamic, they don't want anyone else to know
Yeah.
what they don't know, but I think they know inside.
Yeah,
Most
so
of
they may
them.
be humble or may not, but they may be an organizational thing where they actually it would undermine their authority to demonstrate a lack of knowledge because they're required to have obedience from their followers, and that obedience is based on the illusion of all knowing.
Right.
Meanwhile, they're smart enough to know if I don't actually understand this, it's also a problem. So they have to
Right.
have the private tutors. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's just what I was thinking about when you were talking about all of that.
Yeah, there's a category of person who, because they know so much, they actually have difficulty surrendering to higher power. That Prabhupada talks about on the purport. Category 3 of the impious is that their own level of material skill and knowledge actually intoxicates them. They become distracted and unable to connect that to higher powers. Like, why do I have to understand God? Look how smart I am.
Mm.
Or it could be like Isaac Newton, who's like, his whole thing was to enter the scientific world to glorify how amazing God is by how he organizes the world in such a magnificent way. Both things are possible. Knowledge itself isn't a problem. You just can't get intoxicated by it.
Right.
All right. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai. Narada Muni, chapter 5 of the first canto of Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna, Hare
Krishna,
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 Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare Hare,
Ram, 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 Hare Hare.
So I'll have to pick a new section of Bhagavatam because we're not going systematically. I just chose that section because I thought it's really good. Hope you all did too. But I'll pick a new section. One of the all-timers. See what Krishna suggests
Haribol.
next week. Hare Bol. Have a great day. Have a great week. Panchakalpatubhyascha Kripasindhubhyeva Patitanam Pavanebhyo. May you receive and share Krishna everywhere you go. Sharing's better than knowing.
Mic drop.